Welcome. My name is Kenneth Page, and I'm here with Adulting 101 Org. Here at Adulting 101, our mission is to influence a generation of young people to help build a strong foundation for their lives and help position themselves to discover what they can contribute to this world. Through transparent, vulnerable, and honest conversations, we will teach meaningful, impactful, and applicable life skills that young people need to successfully navigate life. Now today I'm pleased to share with you the first part of this three-part series titled Understanding Credit. Today in part one, what is credit? We really dig into an understanding of what credit is. We break down the components of a FICO credit score, and we talk about ways to start building credit. So this is going to be an amazing conversation today. I need you to grab some pens, some paper, get ready to take some notes, and let's jump right in. Hello, welcome. My name is Kenneth Page, and I'm here with Adulting 101 Org. I'm pleased to introduce you to the panel that's going to be with us today. First, I'd like to introduce you to George Thorson. He's a senior in high school right now, amazing athlete, plays football, great, powerful center. And he's going to be transitioning into college as he's aspiring to be a nurse. George, thanks for being with us.
Yes, sir.
Next, I'd like to introduce you to Kalendra. Kalendra is a senior at USC Upstate, where she's studying criminal justice, and she's aspiring to be a lawyer in her future. Kalendra, thanks for joining us.
I'm glad to be here.
All right, and then our special guest for today. I'm so pleased to introduce you to this young lady. She's a financial literacy coach specializing in credit restoration. Also, she's a graduate from USC Upstate, so we got two Spartans in the house. 2014 graduate, and she also majored in criminal justice with a minor in sociology. Now, after she graduated, she landed a job in human resources, but somehow still ended up with a 580 credit score. Lost on what to do and how to start over. Didn't know where to go next. Well, going through that taught her the importance of being what she needed and spreading information on rebuilding, maintaining your finances, building credit, building wealth, and spreading knowledge like we do gossip. Guys, I am pleased to introduce you to the amazing Miss Serena Danae Jacobs Austin. Guys, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Glad you're here. All right, so today we're going to be coming from the Adulting 101 Curriculum Volume 1, and the subject today, we're going to be talking about credit.
Why is this topic important?
George, I'm glad you asked that question. This is an important conversation because as we're growing up, as we're going through life, no matter what stage you're in, credit is going to affect us somehow, some way, some form or fashion. Maybe not as much in our earlier years, but as we get older, when we get to the stage where, if we're wanting to buy a house, if we're wanting to start a family, if we're wanting to have reliable transportation, if we're wanting to be in control of our finances, credit is going to be wrapped up in that each and every way. And we'll notice a lot of times that when people get older, farther in life, and they're wanting or needing to do things that involve credit, they find themselves unable to do the things that they need to do or unable to do the things that they want to do simply because their credit is in a bad place. And you'll find a lot of times people have poor credit simply because they did not know what it is they were doing. They were making financial decisions, they were making choices, and it ended up impacting their credit. So, you don't have knowledge of what this credit is doing. You go through later in life and you don't realize the importance of credit, and it really sets you up. It sets you up for failure, sets you up for disappointment, sometimes even leading people into depression. So we want to make sure that we're teaching what credit is, the importance of it, how to protect it, how it relates to you, and how to build your credit, especially being in an early age. You all, if you're a senior in high school, or if you're in high school about the transition, or you're in college about the transition, you need to understand how it is to take care of your credit and also how to build your credit. So thanks for asking, George. That's why this is an important conversation that we're about to have. So jumping right into this thing, first I want to ask, all right, you know, George, I'll start with you. What tell me what it is that you know about credit.
I know credit is tied in with credit cards, and you use credit cards and you have to pay them back every month, and that
Mhm.
builds your credit, I think.
Okay.
And I know credit's important when you're trying to make big purchases like cars or houses or anything like
Mhm.
that. But other than that, I mean, that's pretty much it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Kalendra, let me ask you same question. What is it that you know about credit?
Um, you, I mean, you use credit for things that you want. If you pay back at the time that you're supposed to pay back in full, then you're gonna establish good credit and, hopefully, continue to get things that you want later on.
Hmm. You said, and I like what you said. We'll talk more about that later. Establishing good credit by paying stuff off. That's really important. Both of you said that, George. You talked about making sure you're paying your credit cards back. Clinton, you talked about making sure you make your payments on time. So that's two important things. Now let's roll around here. Let's roll around here to the expert, Miss Danae, Miss Serena. When you hear credit, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Debt.
Debt. Debt. Why is that?
Because credit is debt. Ultimately, it is debt. You have to, but you all brought up very good points. Yes, you have to use it properly. A lot of people use it in a way to where it's another line of income when that's not how you're supposed to use it. So people end up in a lot of debt. So with credit, you do want to make your payments on time. It shows how responsible you are with what you have. Ultimately, is what it is.
Hmm. And I like how you put that. I've actually never heard it phrased that way. People using credit as another source of income. Kalindra and George, do y'all know what she might mean when she says using credit as a source of income?
Yeah, like when people get student loans and they go buy cars and stuff.
Absolutely. You know what? Listen, I got to be honest. So I went to college on a scholarship. I was on a scholarship in college, and I think it was like my senior year in college. I had a truck, and I needed some tires. And if you got an SUV, tires cost a chunk of change. I mean, them things was down to the wire. They needed to be replaced, but I didn't have them six, seven, $800 to replace it. So I was like, oh, let me look at my FAFSA real quick. So I took out one student loan, right? I graduated 10 years ago. I took that loan out for like $2,500. Still paying it back. It's not paid off yet. So when you talked about using credit as a source of income, that's exactly what we're talking about. Taking that debt, because credit is debt. Credit is debt. Credit simply explains the process of buying things you don't yet have the money for. That's what credit is. That's what we need credit for, to buy things that we do not have the money for, right? So jumping into that, so one of the big ways that they use to measure credit is, credit is a whole concept, but one of the larger things that we use to measure our credit is our credit score. All right. So Miss Danae, I'm gonna put this graphic up on screen. Will you talk to us about the components of a credit score?
Absolutely. So, as you said, your credit score is what is used for everything that you are trying to establish in your life. 90% of places, whether it's a car dealership, a mortgage loan, 90% of them use your FICO score, but a lot of us don't even know what that's even based off of. So this graphic here is what I give to all of my clients, or even when I'm just doing presentations, to teach people how to even come up with that 580 that I had. Like, what was the ultimate thing that gave me that? So as you can see, 35% of it is your payment history. So that means if you have one late payment, that can drop you anywhere from 50 to 100 points because it weighs so heavily. 30% is the amount owed. So a lot of us having those high student loans, as you just mentioned, Kalindra, that could be a major factor in there. How much of your credit card you use, but we'll get to that later. And then 15% is the length of your credit history. So how long have you had something in your name? I know for me, when I got started into credit, I got a secured credit card with a major bank. And what they do is they kind of cut it off to where you don't use too much of it. But because I started it back when I was 17, it just can continue to build over those years. So 50% is that. New credit. So your new inquiries, like how often are you applying for new things? How often do you put new things in your name? Because inquiries, they do sit on your credit, they are a factor. And then 10% is the types of credit. So that means, is it revolving credit or is it installment credit? It's two different kinds. So your revolving credit will be your credit cards because they just go on forever. And then your installment credits are things that have an ending. So that would be your mortgage. That could be a car payment, things of that sort. So that's really what they come up with. That's what gives you the numbers.
So I noticed it talks about, I see payment history is the actual largest piece on that. You said that a late payment can drop your score. You said like 50 to 100 points? Like you
Yes.
said, it drops. So, like, how long does it take to make those points back up if I miss a payment?
Say it again. You broke up.
How long does it take to like build those points back up if I miss a payment?
It depends. So, because it weighs so heavily, thankfully, it does kind of dwindle over time. So, initially, in the first like year after having a late payment, it will like weigh very heavily on your credit. But the longer that that late payment, goes over time, it will kind of alleviate some of that weight a little bit. So, eventually, like if you look at your credit, it'll say, extreme, say high is a high usage on your credit, but then over time you'll say mild, and then it'll go down from there. So initially, in the first like year after having a late payment, it will like weigh very heavily on your credit. So that means if you have one late payment, that can drop you anywhere from 50 to 100 points because it weighs so heavily. Do automatic payments as much as you can, and then try to pay down on the debt that you have. So the amount owed, as I mentioned before, the more usage you have on that debt is what's going to drop your score as well. So for example, if you have a $1,500 limit on a credit card, you don't want to get close to that 1,500. So as you guys said, paying it on time, but then also being mindful of how much you use. Most places, they would prefer for you to stay at about a 15% usage or lower. So for people that are just getting started on credit cards isn't anything to be afraid of. Yes, in all honesty, it is the quickest way to kind of kill your credit if you're not careful with it, but just use it mildly. So as he mentioned, he used it for his tires. You do want to use it for emergencies. However, you just want to make sure that you have a game plan when you're using them. So if you do have to use it, make sure that you're paying it down as quickly as you possibly can so that that usage will drop, which means your score will go up.
Okay. Okay. George and Calendra, y'all got any questions so far?
No, no, sir.
I know payment history reports on credit reports differently. What I mean by that is like there's different categories of late payment. So you have your 30 days late payment, meaning it's a 1 month late, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, we're at 4 months now, 150 days, and then 180 days. Serena, what normally happens after we get past that 180-day delinquency mark?
9 times out of 10, it will then go over into collections, which basically means that the original person that you owed that debt to, they gave that account away to a collection agency. And then now all of a sudden you're being harassed from this company trying to get their money back, which can also hit your credit anywhere from 100 points and up because that means that you were not responsible with that item. So it can go that route, or if the collection item then sits too long, it will then turn into a charge off, which is basically saying that they just charged it off as bad debt. If you look at it, that's what the bank will call it, is they charge it off as bad debt, meaning that they got a tax write off. They already got their money back, but it's still going to hurt you anywhere from 100 points and up because that means that you were not responsible with that item.
So it's like I have a late payment, then that late payment turns into a collection account, then that collection account turns into a charge off. And by the time we get it to a charge off, they like the institution really got their money back already in the form of a tax write off, or I know some departments call it like their I don't remember what it's called, but I know big businesses like actually have a budget for the people that don't pay them back. And that's just a tax write off, but they still come after you for the money. Now, I've heard this question before. I saw this floating around on the internet, and I didn't think it was true. But I want to ask you, now when an account goes to collections, it's actually sold to another lender. Like another lending company is now responsible for collecting that money. Are we still obligated to pay them, even though we contracted with this company? They sold it to another company, to a third party. Do we technically still owe that third party that money, even though we made the contract with the first company?
No, you don't. With the Fair Credit Reporting Act, it states that you do not. So again, as you just explained it, once it goes into the hands of a third party, the original amount that you owed completely changed. So 9 times out of 10, that collection agency, they changed the original amount that you owed. They don't have the original agreement. So collection agencies, they're trained to get you to admit to who you are within the first 60 seconds. If they call you, you answer the phone, they say this is a recorded line. They do that on purpose. If you not verbally say that is my account, they have no way of proving that it's you. It's not with the original debt collector. They just gave it away. They already got their money, as you just said. And the collection agency, they changed the amount because they tacked their own fees onto it to get more money out of you to make it worth it for them. So the original amount isn't even accurate. So it's so many layers to it that absolutely not.
Oh wow. So obviously it would just be better not to have your account go into collection. But in the
Yes.
event
Yes.
but in the event that it does get to collections, what should we do?
Dispute it.
Dispute it?
You can either do it on your own. Some people do choose to dispute it on their own, but you just have to be very detailed in how you do it. You have to do some research. That's the thing, and it is time consuming. You can either sit on the phone with these people all day and talk to different people, or you can write letters and mail them to the companies that you owe. You can deal with a credit restoration company that is legally disputing them. Not all companies are legally disputing it, meaning that it can come back with a different third party company. So you have to be mindful of who you're dealing with. But you can dispute it. Using that Fair Credit Reporting Act, you have the right to dispute it. And that can be anywhere from collections to bankruptcy to student loans. If they go into collections, like there's nothing that cannot be legally disputed.
I'm gonna end up coming back to that, but I still want to work through this chart. So we just spent a lot of time learning about, how important payment history is to that overall credit score and seeing that. And you were saying like even just one 30-day delinquency, can that drop us 50 to 100? Wow.
Absolutely. Yes.
So if one 30-day late payment does that, once we start getting multiple late payments, once we don't pay that late payment in that 30 days turns into 60 days, is that kind of reporting like two separate delinquencies or is it still just considered one?
No, it's
It's
two
two.
separate delinquencies. It hits your
Oh,
credit in the form of two separate delinquencies. And why they do it that way is because it kind of depends on what's on your credit. So again, as you can see, the types of credit and making sure that you have a good balance of everything. But let me give you an example. If you are a person that's like Kalindra, you're just getting out of college, you may only have one secured credit card. You may have your student loans that you're not even paying yet because they're still forbearance. You just came out of school, and then that's it. If you have those only two items on your credit, and then you're late on that one thing that you have on your credit, of course it's going to weigh heavily, and they're going to hit you twice because that's all you have. You don't have other things that's building it up or keeping it afloat. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
so we're seeing how it's really a lot of different factors wrapped into that total payment score according to this chart here.
I have a
That's
question.
Mhm.
So I've heard a lot of times if you don't pay back like or not credit companies, but like banks, for loans and stuff, what can they take from you? Like as like I think it's called collateral. Like, is it
Oh,
legal for
good
them to
question.
take like your car or something?
Yes.
So
So normally when you're dealing with banks, that's a whole different beast. So with banks, typically, again, it will initially start as a charge off where they got their money back, but it can escalate into judgments. It can become a lien on your home, where they can pull your tax money before you even get it. So your tax returns, they can pull it before you even get it, depending on the state that you're in. Different laws that they go by, different time frames. But then it can turn into a lien once you get a home, meaning that you owe, like they can pull the equity out of your home if you owe them. So it is layers to it. They can try to sue you, especially with credit cards. You would think, oh, it's no big deal, but it can be a judgment where they try to sue you. So yes, it can get pretty ugly. K Page working at a bank. I'll leave the rest to you.
Oh, so what happens a lot of times with loans, the majority of loans, they're either going to have collateral or they're going to be unsecured. If it's unsecured, that means there's no collateral with it. Larger loans, for the most part, mortgages are generally secured with that property. Car loans are generally secured with the car. So what that means, secured with this item, what it means is it's held as collateral. What collateral means is if you don't pay us, we're going to take this item as collateral. Like you owe us this money, you're putting your house down as collateral. So if you don't pay it, we don't want to lose off all this money. We don't want to write $100,000 off of one loan. So because we have your house as collateral, if you don't pay us, we're gonna go to court, sue you, and according to this contract that you signed off on as collateral, we get to take that property. So it kind of depends on like the type of loan you're dealing with and the contract that you enter into. Because that's one thing that we have to understand. When you're dealing with any type of financing, applying for a credit card, applying for a loan, getting any type of that, you're actually dealing with contract law. They're actual contracts that you're now signing off on. You're obligated to do it. And that's another thing. When we're opening up loans, opening up credit cards, it's important that we know that fine print. It's important that we know those details in there because these are actual contracts that we're holding people to. Like you're legally obligated to fulfill this contract. that you signed off on. And that looks like a lot of times like, hey, if you don't pay us, we're going to take this. And like Serena said, depending on the type of loan that it is and what happens in the lawsuit process, they can put liens on your house. They can put, judgments sit on your credit report. For a living, I look at credit reports all the time. I look at it every day. And when I tell you, you see judgments on there and they sit there for years. I mean, it's 2021. I can look at a credit report today and see judgments on there from 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. So it's like, ultimately, when you don't pay what you owe, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt you. It is absolutely gonna hurt you. It's gonna tear your credit apart, and it kind of compounds one on top of the other. Because you remember Serena said if you have a 30-day late payment, that's just one payment. But then if I don't pay that same thing next month, now it's a 60-day late payment. Well, it's one account, but it's marked down as two delinquencies, which means now my credit is impacted twice from just really one late payment. Like it's still late, it's the same one late payment, but now it's impacted me twice. And that just escalates and escalates into you losing stuff. Either what'll happen is either they're not gonna let you get stuff no more, or you're gonna lose what you got. One or the other gonna happen. One or the other is absolutely gonna happen. Does that make sense to y'all?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
Total sense.
Now, when we get to the amounts owed part, so I know that deals a lot with credit cards, but could you kind of go in depth about what that means, the amounts owed portion?
Yes. So again, it's about your usage. With credit cards, and they will kind of trick you. So initially, especially if you're just starting from the bottom, a secured credit card is about, let's say you start off with $200, $300. You don't want to spend any more than 30%. That is like a hard cutoff. You don't want to go any higher than a 30% usage. But I recommend that you don't use any more than 15%, because again, that is not another source of income for you. That is used for emergency or just to build up your credit. So you don't want to say, oh, I have a credit card, I have $200, and you go buy a PS4 and you spend $150 of your credit. You don't want to do that. So you want to keep the usage on it low, as low as you possibly can. And even as your usage is going, or the limit, I should say, is going up, that does not mean you should use more of the card. So again, if it goes up to 1,500, you still wouldn't want to spend any more than, I would say, 500 at a time, and make sure that you're paying it down, showing that you can't handle what you have.
$15% of this thing is made up by length of credit history. So, the biggest ones is going to be payment history, making sure things are paid on time, and then this 30% over here, amount owed. And, Serena gave a fabulous tip, keeping those credit card balances really below 30%, really below 15%, because we want to keep that balance low. It's going to give us a positive credit score. But when we get over here to length of credit history, that just talks about how long you've had credit history, which tells me that we got to start. Like at some point in time, we got to start. I had a friend who was 30 years old at the time, had just gotten married. He had never done anything wrong with his credit. He never opened up a credit card, never took out a loan. He paid for his car in cash. And when he went to buy a house, he couldn't get it because he had no credit. And that's a big portion of that length of credit history. So with credit being important to build, and the longer we have it, the better. Serena, when should we start building our credit, and how should we start building our credit?
Mm. So I feel that it starts with the parents. I highly push all of my young people to go ask your parents about their credit. Why? Is because if your parents have good credit, if they have a good credit history, if they've had, a credit card in their name for 10 years and they don't have any late payments, you can have good credit by the time you're 18 if they use you as an authorized user on their account.
So typically young people, what you can do is start with a secured credit card, and that basically means that the bank will have a cutoff on how much money you can spend on a card. And again, as he mentioned, it's collateral. You will have to put up your own money to establish this relationship with this card, but it will cut off on you, especially if you use a college card, which I recommend. If you do not have that, to go ahead and do that now. If you're a freshman and or however old, go ahead and start that now, because it's going to teach you responsibility. It's going to teach you about credit limits, because the bank will cut it off if you get too close to that limit. So it's a way to help you establish it and keep that over time, meaning, make sure that you're making the payments on time. Which, a trick for credit cards is to make one payment 15 days before the due date and then make another payment 3 days before the due date. The system takes it as two full payments, and if you build that responsibility, or you build that habit, create that habit for yourself, and just continue to do that over time, that secure will come off. It'll become an unsecured credit card. The limit on that card will go up, and then you will continue to build your credit from there. So it's just a great way for you to build credit over time. You can start as young as 18. As I mentioned, I did. I started college at 17. But listen, I'm telling y'all what not to do, because I messed up. I had my credit card for 6 years, and I allowed them to close it, and my score dropped tremendously. So the length of your history is extremely, extremely important.
Opening a line of credit as early as possible, but then making sure that we're responsible when we use it.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, we talked about the biggest factor that negatively affects credit is, payment history, just flat out making payments on time. So we open up a line of credit early on, because if we need it later in life, we got to open it up early so we can start building that credit. Well, two things has to happen. One, we got to make sure we use it properly so we don't hurt ourselves with it. And two, we got to make sure that it stays open. I know with some of the cards that I have, if you go a 12-month cycle without using it, they'll start out and send you a letter or email. Hey, you haven't used this. If you don't use it in the next 90 days, we're going to cut it off. Then I got to run and buy something, pay it off real quick just to leave it open. So for you all, it's like early in life, as soon as you turn 18, just go ahead and jumping into credit, just opening up that first one. My first credit purchase was about a TV. I was in my sophomore, junior year in college, and I seen a 40-inch TV, and I was like, this would make my college room experience so much better. I mean, back then we was playing Call of Duty Zombies all day. It took the zombie game to the next level with the 40-inch. But that was my first credit purchase, and that was over 12 years ago. And now when I look at my credit report, I see length of credit history, 12 years. And I didn't open up a lot of stuff after that for probably like 5, 6 years later when I graduated, got a job and stuff. But having that first thing there allowed me, to have some credit history linked. And I was just wise enough to make the payments on time. I made sure I had some income before I was focusing on paying it off. So that's one strategy to get us started early on with it.
Wow, wow, wow. What an amazing conversation we just finished to kick off this 3-part series on credit. Serena, thank you so much for sharing your credit expertise with us. And George and Kalendra, we appreciate you sharing this conversation with us as well. Viewers at home, thank you so much for your time, and I hope you got something out of this. In fact, what I want you to do is take this opportunity to reflect on the things that we talked about in this conversation. We broke down what is credit, and we began to talk about the components of a FICO credit score, including payment history, amounts owed, and length of credit history. And with that length of credit history, Serena also gave us some tips and tools that we can use today to start building our credit early on in life, because we know that's going to help us out later on in life. So make sure you go back and reflect on the things that we talked about. You might have considered certain situations, circumstances, or scenarios that's in your life, and those didn't come up for no reason. So consider those, as well as consider and reflect on the conversation that we had, so you can do the step number 2, which is apply it. Find some application. You have the information you learned, you have your life as it is, so now we're going to take some application and synthesize this thing so that we can make our lives better. Now, if this video helped you out at all, there's something else I need you to do. Don't keep this to yourself. At Adulting 101.org, it's a nonprofit entity. We want to get this information out. So if this helped you out in any way, if you learned something, if you found it useful, I need you to take this opportunity to share this video with someone close to you, someone that you love, someone that you care about, because it's going to make their lives better just as it made your life better. Now, at the end of this, in the credits, you'll see the contact information for Serena. So if you need some financial help or some credit assistance, go ahead and reach out to her. She would love to hear from you. And you'll also see the contact information for Adulting 101.org. We would absolutely love to hear from you. We left a lot of questions in the video, so come visit us on Facebook and answer those questions. Have a conversation with us. It's at Adulting 101.org, and that's for our Facebook, our Instagram, and our YouTube. And when you interact with us, use that hashtag #DoAdulting. So we're really looking forward to hear from you. And if you support the mission, if you support the cause, what we're trying to do, please donate so we can continue to grow and spread these messages. You can donate at Cash App $DoAdulting, or you can go to the website doadulting.org and you'll find other ways to give there. But again, thank you so much for sharing this conversation. And remember, this was part 1, so there's 2 more parts to finish this conversation off. So make sure you come back and finish this off so you can get all the credit information that you need to apply to your life to make your life better. Thank you again, and we'll see you next week.